Thanks so much for making the time, Jason.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
It's fun to have you on, and I've been following you and sort of David for I don't know how many years, probably better part of a decade, maybe more. We've actually met once before, briefly, so I don't expect you to remember. I only remembered it because of the way in which we met.
Okay.
I didn't know who you were. You were talking at the Next Web Conference, I think, at 10, maybe 12 years ago in Amsterdam.
Yeah, in Amsterdam.
And I'm good friends with Boris and Patrick and the crew, and I was CEO of one of their companies for a few months as well. So kind of hang around the conferences for a while. Not anymore, but used to.
Great guys. Great conference.
They're awesome.
It's one of the best put on conferences I've ever been to. Yeah.
That's great. And I think the guys are, I don't know if they're I think they're still doing them. I've graduated to a different stage in life. I don't go to conferences much anymore.
Yeah.
But we met there and I was like, I'm sorry, who are you? Are you lost or something? And you were like, yeah, I'm talking on stage. And I'm like, okay, cool. Which company? And you were like, 37 Signals. I was like, is that a music label or what is it? I wasn't sure what it was. But I mean, why don't we start from there? Like, I think the name is quite unique, and you sort of, you've blogged about a lot of everything you guys have done, so it's public knowledge, but why the change and why back, and how, sort of just talk a bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start a little bit early, I guess. We started the company in 99 and we were called 37 Signals. And like, again, why the name? Well, we didn't have one. We didn't have a name. There's just three of us. And Carlos, who was one of my partners at the time, he said, I was watching this show, this science show. It's called Nova, for those who might recognize it. And they were talking about space and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And there's all these radio satellite or radio telescopes listening to signs of intelligent life in space. And at the time, there were 37 signals that were unexplained and signs of potential intelligent life or something like that. And so he's like, that phrase 37 signals really just stuck in my mind. Prime number, kind of interesting, and the domain was available. What do you guys think? We're like, let's do it. Sounds great. So we just did that, And then we ran that way for many, many, many years. And then I don't even know when it was, 7 years ago. I always lose track of time, but we switched to just being Basecamp. At that time, we had many, many products. Basecamp, Campfire, High Rise, Backpack. We had a job board. We built this other thing called Know Your Company. We had done some other things, written a bunch of books, and we just were kind of spread pretty thin. We had a lot of things going on in a relatively small team, and we didn't want to build the team up to support all these things at a high level. We just found that we were neglecting things, and that didn't feel good. So we decided to just focus on one thing, which was Basecamp, which was our biggest hit. And then also rename the company to Basecamp, just to sort of double down on the fact that this is the thing we're going to be doing from now on. So we did that for a number of years. And then a few years ago, we had this itch to make a new email service, which is called HEY, HEY.com. And so we launched that. We built that and launched that. And now we're back to a multiple product company again. We're working on actually a couple more things. And so it didn't make sense to be called just Basecamp anymore. So we went back to our original name, 37 Signals, which is the company that made multiple things. So that's sort of the umbrella company, and then each individual brand is its own thing. But that's sort of the ebb and flow of the name.
And I mean, I really enjoyed, because I think you and David, your co-founder and very vocal, talks about a lot of different things, and hopefully we'll cover that at a later stage. But he and you guys are very public about sort of I don't want to say every day, but sort of what it takes to run a company, right? And what it takes to build a company, and maybe sort of go against some of the rhetoric that's, sort of the startup hustle / all of the above, remote work, right? All of the trends that sort of come and go, I guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but is it sort of, that you were in a situation and you made the best of it, and then it happened to work out? And then sort of, you guys talk about that because it works out so well. And of course you did a lot of active things, but it's just, there's times where, people, I mean, you're human, you probably make mistakes, you have kids, family, things like that sort of. So it's like we put entrepreneurs, especially ones that sort of get money from VCs, on a sort of separate pedestal at times, and I'm like, I mean, people fuck up, things go right, things go wrong. So it's just, to me, there's I don't know, with luck or external influences. I just want to hear if you have anything to say about that, because I always find it, hindsight is 2020, right? So
yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount of luck and timing is luck, kind of. I mean, sometimes there's a moment that you can see and take advantage of. I can only tell you that we've just made it up as we've gone. So we didn't see an opportunity in 2004 to launch Basecamp as one of the first SaaS products. We didn't see it. It was just like we just built the thing and launched it. It wasn't like this is the time. We've been waiting for this. You just did it. And it turned out that it was the right time to do that. And we've had good timing. We've had some bad timing. I think Campfire is another interesting example of, in some ways, bad timing. Campfire, which is our group chat tool, came out in 2006, way ahead of its time, maybe a decade or so more ahead of its time. People didn't really get it. People weren't really ready for it. And then Slack comes around, of course, and becomes a big thing. Slack, they're not the same. Slack was better, but conceptually, the idea was the same fundamentally. And so, timing there wasn't so great, and there's more to it than just that. Of course, their product is really, really good and whatever. But fundamentally, we've just made it up as we've gone. And we tend not to think long term other than let's stay in business for the long term, but we tend to think very, very short term. So right now, we work basically plan 6 weeks at a time. That's kind of it. And I think when you do that, you're able to make a lot of adjustments. So if you screw up, it's like, well, it was just, we screwed up 6 weeks or 12 weeks or maybe 18 weeks if there's 3 screw ups in a row or something. But it's not like we decided to go this direction for 4 years and now we're in the wrong place. Like, you kind of get a chance to constantly recalibrate yourself. And I think that admitting that you don't know what's going to happen, you don't really necessarily know what you're doing, but you know what you're doing now, or you have a sense of what you're doing now, is kind of the best way to run a business. And it's very unconventional. People freak out when they hear that we don't have time frame, long planning phases, or we don't have goals or expectations really of things. We just do the best we can right now, reevaluate all the time, and figure out what to do next based on how things are going, how we're feeling, where things seem to be, new things that develop. So we're making it up as we go, and I like it.
And I think I like it too. So I think if we're honest with ourselves, even the most sort of long-term, quote unquote, minded people, they have to live in the now. They have to deal with the everyday, right? So whether you might not have a company structured potentially as clearly as you sort of, you guys run your 6 weeks, and I've also haven't finished Shape Up, but I've started reading it and sort of find it really interesting the way you guys also, talk about product development and things like that. That's really exciting to sort of read different opinions on a topic, which is quite ubiquitous right now. But mm-hmm. I think what's interesting is that, like, the 6 week thing, right? Because was that also sort of just happenstance? Was that also like you tried it and then 12 was too much or 4 was too little, or I don't know, whatever the other sprint, Kanban, et cetera, didn't work out? Or how'd the 6 weeks come about?
Yeah, we've tried a bunch of things over the years. 6 weeks is more of the last few years been working this way. But there was a time in our past where we didn't have any time boxes whatsoever. We just, like, things should take as long as they're going to take to get just right. And there's some advantages to that as well. Like, I think you can ship in some ways significantly higher quality things, but the question is, was the quality worth it everywhere it shows up? I think there's places where quality is definitely worth it, and there's places where it's not. And if you just let things go as long as they need to go, you tend to probably put more quality in more places that don't really necessarily need it.
What do you mean by that?
So I think that go ahead.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, like, how do you decide where quality is needed and where it isn't?
Yeah, it's a bit of an abstract thing to talk about because we're not looking at something real or pointing at something real. But let's just say, like, there's parts of a product, for example, with HEY. Let's take HEY, for example, our new email service. The onboarding process in HEY, I think, is really good. I'm really extraordinarily proud of that process. We spent a lot of time building that and dialing it in, because I felt like the first impression was so important. People are so used to using email. They already have it. They have it for free. And we're about to ask you to pay for this email thing. So, and it's, Hey is so different. The way it handles email, the way it gives you permission to accept email from people you want or say no thank you to people you don't. There's a whole thing that's different about it. And we felt like it was so different and so unique and such a special experience that we wanted to make sure that onboarding process was really interesting, quick, educational, clear. So we layered a lot of quality into that. There's other parts of Hey that are more just basic table stakes, like contact management in Hey is not very good. It's adequate, but it doesn't really need to be much better than it is, really. It's that contacts are there, they're auto-completed, they're auto-generated when you get emails. Like, it's all there. But if I look at that, I go, I could spend 3 months making that a hell of a lot better, but then I would probably be wasting 3 months on something that doesn't quite matter. So that's what I mean when I talk about putting quality into some things and not into other things. But if there was, and part of this is time-based, like, we built the contact thing, let's call it, in 6 weeks or something, whatever. And it's like, I could spend 12, I could spend 18, I could spend 24, keep spending time and making it better and better and better, but it wouldn't be worth it. That's what's nice about limiting your time on something to 6 weeks, is that it prevents you essentially from making something too good, where it's not needed. And the things that need more good can be back-to-back cycles. So we could end up spending 12 weeks, which I think we probably did, on onboarding as a whole, but it was split into 6-week projects. And so we just said, we're going to do another one of these after this to make this even better. So I think that's kind of the best way I could put it.
Yeah. And I'm an early Hey user. I have a 4-letter email. I'm proud of that.
Good for you. Lucky man.
But I agree, the onboarding was great. And I'm sure you guys have improved it since then or changed it since, because I've been on it for a bit. But I think I like the product a lot. I sort of use it for all of my email. Even I have business emails on Google, but I just prefer them coming to Hey, because I think the experience is, there's parts of it that I find annoying. The search sometimes breaks and things like that. That's fine. But like you said, most of it is the important things, at least, that people that want to pay for something different to a free web app or a free app on your desktop. I guess they care about those things. And I mean, maybe I think about it a little bit like, and I know you're into watches, so we can sort of tally to that a little bit, but sort of cars or watches are sort of things that you can get a basic car, you can get a basic watch that does the job, and you might like it for its basic appeal. And then there's, I don't know, levels of luxury that you can go into, and there's sort of craftsmanship, but then there's also like, is it really that much better? Or are you just buying the brand, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that a bit, because I know you're into it, so I just...
Yeah, is it that much better is always an interesting question, because then the thing I think about is like, on what dimensions? And I think like Tesla is a great example of this, actually. Tesla, I don't think anyone who owns a Tesla is like, this is an incredibly high quality car. The panel gaps aren't quite very good. The interior materials are pretty light and flimsy. A lot of rattles. It's not a Mercedes or a BMW or, a Cadillac or something kind of high end where like they've dialed in the car making process. But Tesla focused on other things that they thought were more important than those things. And so, is it worth it? Is it better? It depends on how you're evaluating something. If the rules are you have to evaluate everything based on a Mercedes-Benz S-Class level of quality, then Teslas aren't as good. But if you're talking about electric and range and charging and infrastructure and all that stuff, like, they crush anything that Mercedes makes. So it just depends on the metrics. And so for something like Hey and Basecamp, we're focused on the things that we think are important parts of, in this case, email, or in this case, team collaboration, communication, organization. And our points of view are different than the rest of the industry. We have a different take, just like Tesla has a different take on what's important about a car. We have a different take on what's important about email, or important about collaboration or project management or communication, or organization or coordination. And it's up to customers to figure out which version of that they resonate with. But I think it's important for a company to understand, to have a point of view and then invest in that specific point of view, versus making yet another thing that kind of already exists. If you use Hey and use Gmail, it's email, but it's different. And if you use both, you know they're different. They're different on a variety of really specific levels. Gmail search crushes ours, obviously, but like replying to a batch of emails in Hey is much better. Not getting emails from people you don't want, much better. Managing your time and expectations, much better. There's just different values. So that's what's interesting. And when it comes to watchmaking and whatnot, a great example, like, you can keep going up the chain. You can go, from Timex to, to Rolex, and then, to Langanzone, and you can go to Patek, and you can go to all these different levels. They're all telling time, and sometimes the date, and sometimes the day of the month, and whatever. But then you get into finishing, and you get into the handwork. And is it better? Often, like, it's not better than a cheap quartz watch. Like, a cheap quartz watch tells better time, but a Patek chronograph or something, and you look at and it's better in different ways, and you have to appreciate those ways to see the value. And if you don't, you're like, why would anyone spend 80 grand on this thing? And it's a totally valid question to ask. But if you value the things that it does, and you have that kind of disposable income, then you can appreciate those things at a different level. And that's what's wonderful about choice and different companies with different points of view.
I couldn't agree more. When I was 18, I left India and I did an internship at LVMH a long time ago.
Seen a lot of things then, yeah.
And I studied French, just happened to get an internship. And the fashion industry, in LVMH specifically, is very unique in the way they put things together, let's put it that way. And so in a very short period of time as an intern, I got to sort of work with spirits as well as fashion, as well as, some watch stuff in like a very short period of time. And I think it's not my industry anymore for a long time, but I understand the sort of space, and I get what you mean. I think sometimes tech, because I'm in tech now for a while, but sometimes tech could use some of those sort of understanding of human psychology, right? Because it's about, at the end of the day, you're selling to people, AI, AR, whatever, all the craziness. At the end of the day, someone's going to use your product or pay for it and have an emotion or an outcome, probably both, attached with it. So if you can craft something that speaks to a few more emotions rather than just, the UX being based. I mean, what I like about Hey, and I think it's not a free promotion for you guys or anything,
sure.
But what I like about Hey, particularly me, is that I'm really annoyed with invoices. And I just love that sort of paper trail button. Like, it's my favorite thing. And it's like, it's, I know it's the label and you can get a label in other apps, but I just like that it's so simple and it's one click and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And if I'm, and it's those kind of simple opinions that you guys have that I think people like me, whoever else pays for Hey.
Yeah, I think that's, so that's a good example. I mean, this is fun to talk product in this way because, that's an example of a point of view. Our point of view is, so what you just described. So in Hey, there's a feature where you can specify if a specific sender's emails go to your inbox, which is kind of what you always see, or to what's called the feed, which is like a newsletter where you can read it more like a scrolling feed, or to the paper trail, which is like a collection of receipts, invoices, shipping notices, and whatnot. And you can also move things individually. Now, you can do all of that, let's say, in Gmail. You can set up your own mail rules. You can create labels, right? But what we've done in Hey is create workflows that are built into the product based on how people use email. In Gmail, you can make your own. In Hey, you cannot make your own. We have them set up for you. And if you resonate with our methods of organizing and understanding, then it's just going to feel like a natural fit, like a shoe that just fits you perfectly. If you're the kind of person who wants to thoroughly customize everything and set up your own workflows and really go for it, like Hey is not for you. Gmail is for you, right? So these are different points of view, and we've intentionally kept heavy customization out of Hey. because there's better tools for that. But if you just want something that works really well, that's thoughtful, that takes workflows into consideration, that every person deals with all the time, and it just works out of the box, like HEY is a better fit. So these are where opinions diverge on products, and then where companies decide to invest their energy. And so for us, it's on things that just work out of the box versus deep customization. Yep.
Totally agree. And I think there's, like you said, every person has so many options today, right? Like if you, there's X amount of software for almost every category, right? So it's about essentially like the sort of Seth Godin thing. People like us do things like this kind of vibe, where it's like if you're interested in these things and if this means something to you, then here you go, right? So that's nice. Yep. We stand with the underdogs. That's how we're here, because you put something up on Twitter, which was a long tweet for you. But I mean, I've been reading your, what do you call it, World at HEY? Like, I don't know.
Is HEY World. Yeah.
HEY World. There we go. Yeah. I post sometimes, I deleted it, post it again, but I'm getting used to sort of trying to post more often now. But you guys have made it easy to post, so there's no excuses anymore. But I think, what I find interesting with that specific post is that it felt a bit different. It sort of felt like a rallying call. Where did that come from, and why did you write it?
Yeah. We had a meetup recently, a company-wide meetup, which we have twice a year in different cities around the world. This time was in New Orleans. And in preparing for my talk, so David and I do a talk in the morning, usually on Monday morning. This time it was Tuesday morning, but usually the kind of a state of the company, where are we going, sort of that kind of thing, roughly, Again, we don't plan long term, but like, here's where we're headed, and here's what's on our minds, and here's what we've been thinking about lately. And typically we've always been talking about small business. Our customer is a small business. Most of our customers have fewer than 20 people in their company. They're small companies, small teams, that kind of thing. We're not interested in enterprise sales or enterprise companies. They're like small companies. That's where we're from. That's kind of who we are. We're more than 20 people now, or 80, but like, we're a small independent company. And as I started digging into that more, I got bored with it. You go, small company, like, there's no emotional hook there. People identify as a small company. I shouldn't say there's no emotional hook, but a lot of people talk about small business. It became this very smooth object with no grip, and it didn't. And I just kept thinking, like, what is it really about small that we like? What do we really like about small? Like, how do we get to the epicenter of this concept? And then it sort of hit me. It's like all about being an underdog, being underappreciated, being up against bigger companies, bigger competitors, being small in an industry full of giants. These are all things that are true for us, even at 80, but that also relate to companies with 8 people or 4 people. Because in our industry, our competitors are thousands of people, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing. We're not, and we're 80 people. So this feeling of being up against and being challenged by, and being smaller, but having to punch harder, like that, I got goosebumps when I started thinking about it. Like, that was the thing. That's the real hook here. And we're actually currently redoing the Basecamp site to represent that message. And that, it just hit me. And so I talked about that. And then I wrote something up about it that was kind of just a stream of consciousness. What does it feel like to be an underdog? What is it about? Why do we love them? Why do we support them? Why do we stand with them? Why do we make tools for them? I've always felt like our tools give small companies huge leverage and let them move fast. And that's the kind of stuff that, like, just saying we make tools for small businesses, it doesn't really hit as hard as like we make tools for the underdogs. So anyway, I wrote that up and posted it, and decided on Twitter now that you can kind of write long posts to like post the whole thing there also. It's not that long. It's like, I don't know, 600 words or something, or maybe even 300 words. I don't know. But that was a fun thing. And it really resonated. And it made me think we're onto something with that. And the other thing about it is that it's true. So one of the things I think is important about marketing, messaging, whatever you say as a company, should kind of be something only you can say. So like if you think about like our competitive set, although we compete against all sorts of things, including email and phone calls and in-person stuff and whatever, and Excel. But like think of Asana and Monday and ClickUp and Trello and these, like they can't really go for the underdogs. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing. They're losing hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Like underdogs don't have the privilege of having hundreds of millions of dollars to blow on anything. So if they talk that way, you're like, BS. That's just bullshit. You're lying to me. So I like to find a message that only we can say. I mean, there's other small companies that could say this, but in our field, we are that. So we're being true, talking about us and our customer base. And I think when you can resonate one-to-one, there's something there. And we have not fully rolled this out yet. So we're like, that post was sort of the line in the sand, like or put a flag in the ground, like this is our point here. And now we're going to kind of move that out. But that's where that came from.
And
the other thing I wanted to say actually really quick is that I wrote that in 5 minutes. If it takes me longer than that to get a thought out, I usually throw it away. I don't like to work on writing very much because I feel like it either has to flow. I mean, I edit it after it flows out, but it's got to flow naturally. Or if I'm struggling with it, I haven't really gotten it yet. So that one felt good because it came out quickly.
Yeah, and I think it felt good to me and everyone else who read it. And I think for me, it's rare that Twitter gives me goosebumps. so I was a bit like, okay, this is, and you know, I don't know you personally or anything, but I was like, okay, this guy, this sounds cool. Like I like the vibe, I like the reason behind it, maybe. But I think what was interesting was that you could sort of feel that, yeah, I'm an underdog. Like I'm starting a company now with 2 other guys, and we're super early. And you know, I've done this a few times before, but you're still starting from zero, and up against, you know, massive companies.
Everything. You're up against everything.
Exactly.
You're up against the odds. You are expected to lose.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting place to be.
Oh man, I love it. I love it every day. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah.
I think there's people who sort of, who can relish in that, I guess, right? Who sort of, you know, count me out. Like let's see what happens, right? Like let's go. And I think there's people who are, yeah. Sorry, you want to say something?
I think, yeah. I mean, for me, being underestimated is sort of the primary fuel for me. That's how I got into this career in a sense. I remember early on in my web design days, I submitted some work for an award that was popular at the time. And the guy wrote me back. This is like the most popular award at the time. This is like how you got the word out about your work. Got a big following. And he wrote me back. He's like, you suck. You shouldn't do this work. And it just fueled me. I just love it. It might be because like I've always been like I'm short. I'm like 5'7", you know, and I was pretty good at basketball. And you know, I walk on the court, man, I'm a short guy, and I just love it. I just love it, you know. That's the kind of stuff I love. And so, you know, being underestimated is a killer place to be, I think. Now, some people, like you said, they sort of shrink and collapse under that. But for me, it is the fuel. And I think when we're not being underestimated, it loses its edge and fun in a sense. I want to always be in places where we're underestimated.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm a little taller, but I'm short for basketball standards.
Yeah.
And sort of, you know, it's kind of the same. I played basketball my whole life, and sort of, I was always a fat kid. So like people were like, okay, you're not big enough and you're not tall enough. But I was like, let's just go. Let's see. Let's
see what happens.
Let's see. Yeah. And there was I don't know.
Let's see what the final score is. Who cares what I am? Let's see what the final score is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's this, I don't know why, when you spoke, reminded me of a coach. We went to an international school in India. That's why I sound weird, American, Indian, whatever. I grew up in India, but I went to an international school. Mm-hmm. We had this American college coach who came for like the last 2 years of high school, and he came for a few months, and he was like, came up to me. He was like, dude, Geet, one rule: let the ball pass or the man, never both. Like, that's it. And I was like, okay, got it. I'll remember that. Mm-hmm. Ball or man, never both. Got it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's one of those things, which is like it's there's sports teaches you a lot, right? And I think for me personally, it's in a similar way, sort of, people count you out because of the way you look, because of the way you don't look, because of,
Yeah.
where you're from, or they're not. And I think, and what you stand for, how you communicate, how you say things, how you don't say things, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a good personal set of tools to bring to any fight, right?
Yeah.
Because might as well, like, if it's going to be hard to take this guy out, so let's see what happens. No, but I
Yeah.
think
I mean, we relish this too. I want to add, like, during that, when we launched Hey, we got caught up with this thing with Apple, where Apple like wouldn't allow Hey in the App Store for some reasons. And man, that was just like the most fun we've ever had. It's like, okay, you want to take us on? Okay. Like, you're Apple. You're the biggest company in the world. We're, 50 people at the time. This is an existential threat. Like, if we can't get in the App Store, you basically can't really launch an email thing. And we fought and fought and fought from the underdog position, which garnered us a lot of support, because it's an advantage. People just miss it. It's an advantage to be the underdog. It can be harder, but it's an advantage. And we just, fought Apple and kind of, quote, won in the way we needed to win, essentially. And it was great. And so, like, that's the kind of thing, like, okay, let's go. It's the let's go mentality. Let's do it. All right, let's go. Let's go and see what happens. And that's fun. That's where the fun is to me in business.
and I think after that sentiment is where, like, creativity starts, right? It's like let's go. Clearly, you're gonna have to come up with some new ways of doing stuff. You're gonna have to come up with some new ideas, some new techniques, new tricks, whatever you want to call it. Sort of, figure out what's really going on. That's what I really liked about the sort of second half of your piece, right? Like, what do you got? Hunger, drive, grit, scrappiness, independence. You're on offense. I think sort of each of those words has its own, set of analogies behind it. But I think what's interesting is, as you said it, right? There's sort of, let's see what the truth is, right? Like, that's the whole point. It's like, I have an opinion, you have your opinions. You might have more money, you might have more whatever. You also have the sort of disadvantages that come with all that, right? All that bloat. I think you used a different word in the piece. Yeah.
I don't have
Bloat.
it up, but yeah.
You say bloat. You say bloat. Sorry. I just read it before. So, but I think it is that kind of sort of, we talk about. I got into startups, 17 years ago now. My first startup in the first week of university, because I was like, I need an internship. I can't find any good internships. Let me build a platform for internships and send the first ones to my dad's company in India. Like, that was it. There was no bigger vision. And then ran that company for 5 years and had it didn't end up working out, had a small exit just to get out of it with a bit of money. But, I sort of learned a lot along the way. And it's like, at the end of the day, I'm not into startups for the glamour, or for that's not the point, right? I think I find it quite annoying personally, the whole sort of startup hustle culture. I think people ask me, what do you do? Like, I think there's a word in Danish which is really, it was annoying me in the beginning, but now I kind of like it. It's sort of, what is, like, when my wife is asked, what does your husband do for work? He's like, oh, he's a single worker or something, like a freelancer.
Okay.
They have a word for it. And it doesn't matter if you're running, a massive company with 10 people, there's, like, the word entrepreneur means, like, someone who builds stuff here, right? So it's like, and I think there's this mentality of Danish culture as well, maybe, where it's like, let's just talk about what's real. Like, let's not bloat things up. Let's not do marketing. Let's just figure out what's actually going on here. And there's negatives to it, of course. There's a lot of problems with it. But anyway, I think it's interesting that there's parallels to all that.
That's cool. There's a real truth to it. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what can you make? What can you do? It's similar to, like, when we hire people, I don't look at resumes. I don't care. It doesn't mean a thing to me. Like, what can you do? I don't care where you went to school if you didn't go to school. I don't care where you worked if you haven't worked. I don't really care about those things. What can you do? Show me what you can do. Show me some work. Let's look at some real stuff. Let me maybe talk to some people you've done real work with. Like, that's the stuff I really would like to evaluate, not like what the bullet points are, because whatever. So that's it. That's how we've always been, which is like, let's just get to the basics here. What really matters and what doesn't. And when it comes to hiring, it's like, what have you done? That matters. I don't care what your GPA is. It means nothing to me. I don't care what school you're in. It means nothing to me. What can you do? And when it comes to products, like, what does your product do? What's your point of view on that? And when it comes to sports is like the ultimate version of that, which is like, let's play. I don't know. Let's play. Everything else fades away. Let's play. And let's see how we do. So, and the cool thing about sports too is that, like, you can lose and it can still be fun. That's the thing to me about business too, is like, technically we're losing to Google. Like, first of all, we're never going to beat Google at email. Gmail has 1 billion users, right? I don't care. I'm not even trying to beat anybody. But someone could go, you're losing to them. I go, whatever. We're having a lot of fun though, and we're doing great on our own, in our own realm, which is another really important thing I wanted to you didn't ask me about this, but I'll just mention it here, because competition is an interesting thing in business, because every company has its own economics. So for example, if we have 50,000 paying customers for HEY, that would be an abject, absolute failure for Google. Like, they would shutter the product tomorrow if they only had 50,000 pay. For us, it's amazing. It's a huge, wonderful business for us, because our costs are much lower, our overhead is much lower, and our expectations are much different. Google needs to have at massive scale. So are we competing? I mean, yeah, and that customers are picking a product, but we don't need to match them in terms of the number of customers that pick ours versus theirs. We just need to find enough that pick ours to deal with, to sort of cover our costs and cover our economics, which is a much smaller number. So we're not really on the same playing field, even though we're in the same industry and have a similar product. And I think that's what's really also very just interesting about business. It's different than sports. I mean, sports, like, here's a score, and like, it's kind of a win-loss sort of thing. It's not that in business. Business is not sports, even though the metaphors are very strong. It's not sports.
And I think it's you can learn, as you said, metaphors are very strong, but I think, and I think just to sort of make a point, right? I've heard you talk a couple of times in different podcasts, and sort of there's sometimes the picture is painted that there's like HEY and Basecamp here, and Google and the big players there, right? And there's a bunch in the middle, and there's a bunch on the other side of the timeline, right? So I think that's the fun part. There's an ecosystem, right? There's a lot of products, a lot of companies with opinions. There's you can go out there and pick what you want. You can choose what you like, and that's it. And I think that's, and if you, of course, there's paradox of choice or whatever. There's a certain amount of things you can choose, and I think why do you choose a product? Like, sometimes I'll choose a product because I like the logo, I like the UI, I like the way it feels. If it's a personal sort of product I'm using every day, then I'll go with that. But if it's a product that me and 50 other people have to use, and I'm not a dictator, potentially I want to maybe try something else. If everybody's like, I've tried getting Basecamp into many places, and some people are like, it just doesn't work for us. We're used to XYZ, and I'm like, sure, like, I'll plan my podcast and personal stuff somewhere else, right? Yep. And I think, and I've also had issues with Basecamp sometimes, because I find it interesting in the sense that HEY works for me like perfectly. Like I've enjoyed it. It's fine. It works really well. I enjoy everything, and every product has its quirks, and you live with it. But I think with Basecamp, there's features you guys add that I was missing. Then they came, and I was like, oh my God, this is way better than I thought. For example, the hill chart thing you have with the to-dos. Oh, I love that. I was like, why isn't everybody stealing this? Right? This is like such a great feature, like this. And I think it's how work is done, and no other tool has that integrated. And then you guys got some more stuff. So now you guys have added a bunch of cool features that now I'm gonna be like, okay, now the new company is gonna be in Basecamp most likely.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the hill charts thing is a good example of hill charts are tied to a philosophy. And so that's where most of our features come from is there's a reason for it existing in the product, the way it works and the way it is. And if another company doesn't share that philosophy, then they're going to look at that and go, what's the point? I'm not going to do that because that's not where they stand, which is totally fine. And I think like Card Table, which is our version of Kanban, our take on Kanban, which we added to Basecamp recently, is a Kanban-esque thing, but with spins tied to our own philosophy on work and how things should begin. And it's a different take, similar idea, but different take. And so I think I'd love just to see more and more and more and more companies have their own unique take on things. That's what's exciting about competition to me, is seeing multiple takes, not just different versions of the same thing. That's just, it doesn't add much to the world. So
it doesn't push us
that's one
forward.
thing that's cool, but I think it's going on about like the Twitter saga right now with Mastodon. Like Mastodon, I mean, I know it started a little bit further back, but it's really kind of now getting its chance because a lot of people left Twitter or don't like whatever's going on over there. And so like, it's really cool to see. And that's a different approach. Yeah. The atomic unit is kind of the same, this tweet or whatever. I don't know what they're called, Mastodon, but whatever they are, it's kind of the same. But the decentralized version of it and the way it works and the servers, it's like a different approach. That's really cool to see. So I think these are good competition that's different with different takes is very, very healthy. But too many companies doing the same thing is boring. So I think that's something we need to avoid.
I agree, and I think what I'm starting now, we're gonna try to be very different as well with the way we do things. We're going into an industry which is very different.
Okay.
I can talk about it after. I just don't want to make it public yet because we're not 100% ready. But I think what's fun. I always found it really annoying. It's a totally different example, but it'll make sense in a second. In India, I grew up in India, like Bollywood movies back in the days, they just copied like Hollywood movies, like the ones that were successful, they would just copy them and hire local, whatever, actors. And I was like, that is so stupid. Like, why would you do that? Why don't you just, tell original stories? And I think it's a similar kind of idea to what you're saying. It's like, show us your version. Like, show me your 360 dunk. Don't copy my, don't copy my whatever, cartwheel, whatever it is, right? I think that's the point. It moves us forward. Also, I think if someone tries something, maybe it'll inspire you guys, right? And vice versa. I think it's about also sort of, getting better and seeing how people do stuff. So I think that's the whole point. Sorry, go on.
Agreed. No, I got nothing more to add to that. I'm with you. I'm with you on that completely. Yeah.
Very cool. There's a train coming. Sorry, I'm at the train station. I got to thank my buddy for lending his space.
This is like I used to live in Chicago, and our first office was right next to the train, like a meter from the train. And it would pass by every like 12 minutes. And it's so loud and old and rickety. So I'm so used to like going, hang on, train, just hang on. Okay, good. So I know what you're going through.
Luckily, it's only every half an hour. And it's because my kids will wake up. That's why I can't do it at my home office. Anyway, I think I really like the Hey World setup. Again, the simplicity is really cool for someone like me who's tried a bunch of blogging platforms and, also his own site for a bit and then didn't really want to maintain it or anything like that. So I think it's kind of nice. But there's this, you write a lot there, and as you said, like now that I heard you say it, that you sort of try to write stuff in 5 minutes, right, or something, you get it out of your head. that's a nice tool. I'm going to steal that and also start writing that way. I think it's a fun way to do it.
10 minutes, 15 sometimes, but yeah,
Okay.
it's got to roll out. It's got to roll.
It's funny because I wrote a post because the startup I'm building I've been working with sort of, deep tech companies for about 8 years. Mostly no one cared about them. It's university people, super technical. And
Yep.
so kind of the AI world, AI becoming so popular now is like so like a positive surprise to me because we're building something in that space. So you sort of have this like, oh my God, are we going to be killed by OpenAI or one of these other companies tomorrow, day after, right? And every time there's a new, Apple had their big WWDC, and there's a meme, right? Like 20 companies or 50 companies died, or whatever it is, right? Because of the features, updates to notes or whatever, right? Or PDF, whatever the updates were. A minor little Apple update kills 20 companies, right? Or whatever.
Right.
So I think I sort of wrote this post about sort of, focus and simplicity, and it was just my own thinking. I just, instead of writing it in my personal notes, I just put it on Hey World, and I read it a few days, and I just put it up on LinkedIn, and a few people liked it. I'm like, okay, nice, whatever. And then I read it a few days after, and I'd forgotten I'd forgotten that thought process, and I was like, I get it. Okay, cool. It's kind of a time capsule almost. Sometimes it's like if you can sort of capture whatever the hell is going on in your head and get it out on something, then maybe your future self is going to be like, thanks for that. That was cool. That was a good reminder, right, about something. And I don't know, just my little way of doing it. Sorry.
No, some people use it for journaling in that way. What's interesting about Hey World is that it's the idea was to make publishing so simple. You just email an address and it's published, versus signing up for a separate publishing tool and worrying about templates and design and all, and just all the stuff you worry about that doesn't matter anyway. But part of that was because we all write emails all day long and don't seem to have a problem doing that. So how can we make it so easy that you can just write a blog post and not feel like there's this big ceremony around it? And by not promoting them, we don't promote the posts anywhere. They're yours. And if no one sees it, no one sees it. If you want people to see it, they'll see it. Like, it's up to you. And I think that's a big part of why you can use it as a personal journal, in a sense that some people might come across it somehow, somewhere. But if you're not sharing the link out, no one's going to really find it.
I think you're right. And I think there's I want to talk about a post, but there's like journals. It's interesting because there's so many journaling apps like Day One and a couple of others that have existed that have done well, right? For me personally, I think when you put too much of a ceremony on something, like if it becomes too structured, it's almost like that gets in the way of the free flowing sort of thoughts, right? Because and there's discipline, and of course the whole sort of I get that sort of getting into some sort of routine, but if it's sort of a thought that hits you, or you see, and I think you had a couple of posts we'll talk about. One of them was you had these sort of you picked a couple of categories of things, like a video, something you heard, something you saw, and it's kind of that sort of idea. I was like, that's cool, because you're just coming up with a little subcategory of posts. You post sometimes, you don't post sometimes, and it's kind of like having that flexibility is great. And then if there's some personal journaling specific stuff, then you can do that in a Moleskine or even on an app if you like, right? Or like go Derek Sivers, set up your own HTML stuff, right? Whatever you want. And I think what's nice is that you get to choose again. We're talking about that seems to be a trend in our conversation.
Yeah, I think everyone's very, very different in that way. And like, I'm not good with expectations and setting schedules. Like, if I have to write every day, if like this app was reminding me to write every day, I would hate the app. I'll write when I have something to write. Like, when something pops in my head that I want to get down, I'll write that. And that could be 5 days in a row and 2 weeks off. It could be every other day. It could be 3 days in a row, 2 days off, 1 day on, 7 days off. It's whenever it strikes. And so for me, that's my style, my method. But other people feel like they need that pulse every day or every other day, whatever it might be. And so you find something that works for you. And that's why, again, there should be a lot of options and a lot of places to go and a lot of things, which is another reason why we push back so hard against really big tech because big tech swallowed, to your point, and I don't blame Apple or any company for like innovating. They should keep making the best stuff in the world that they can, of course. But they, because of their size, they'll often swallow other things. And that's, again, just the nature of it. I don't hold that against them. But there does seem to be, in some ways, less choice as a result of that in some ways, because people are like, why would I start a journaling app? Apple just launched journaling yesterday or something. I think I saw some mention of I don't know where it is or how it works, but, or notes or reminders or whatever it is. It's like, why launch that? That's like a solved problem. And that's kind of how we felt. I think everyone's felt that way about email for years. Gmail was launched, when we launched Hey, it had been 16 years since Gmail launched. And it was kind of like the latest movement in email. People were like, email's solved. And so that's what happens when big companies start to get into these areas. But then I think there's opportunities all over the place for new small companies to think about things differently. So anyway, I'm getting a bit circular on this, but everyone's got to find their own way of doing their own things. And all you can do is put a point of view out there, and those who resonate with it will follow it, and those who don't will find another one. It's fine.
Yeah, agreed. I want to talk about you and your co-founder, David, because I think you guys have been working together for how many years now? How many years has it been?
I don't even remember. It's probably something like 18 years or something like that.
And that's quite rare as well, right? Just a partnership to sort of last that long.
Yeah.
And you guys, at least online and in your content and things you put out, you guys seem pretty different. There's clear sort of, there's a overlap of the Venn diagrams, but there's clear red and blue or whatever, black and white, whatever you want to call it, different colors.
Yep.
If you to put words to it, why has the sort of partnership lasted so long, and why does it work well, and where does it not work well at times?
I'll randomly throw a few things out. So I think the Venn diagram overlap, like there's quite a bit of overlap. So if you have a Venn diagram that's like barely touching, you're probably gonna be butting heads a lot. But if you have a Venn diagram where there's a lot of merger in the middle, then you're sharing heads a lot. And I think that we share a lot of points of view, directional points of view in the same way, which means we're not constantly arguing and fighting. We do fight around the edges and argue around the edges around product development, what's important and what isn't, and where is it worth spending money and where isn't it? Those are the healthy discussions. But if we're butting heads over every damn thing, like a lot of partners do, not good. So I think that's one thing. We're also different in what we do. David's a programmer. I'm a designer. So I don't talk about programming with David, and David doesn't really talk about design with me, right? He has more opinions about design because a lot of people can have opinions about design. Far fewer people can have opinions about programming if they don't really understand it. I don't understand it enough to even have a debate with him or discussion, so we don't talk about that. But because we're in different areas of the business, our primary focus is in different areas of the business, that's healthy. I also think that we're both people who love hearing different points of view and can get along with all sorts of people who we don't agree with. So when we fight and argue hard sometimes, like 5 minutes later, we're fine. We're fine. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't see it that way. Fine. It's not like you're an idiot. You're this, you're that, you're at this pole or that pole, and I can't even talk to you because you have this crazy belief. It's like, that's how a lot of people are these days. They find one thing they don't like about someone, they double down, and they don't like the rest of them. We're not that way. So we're very comfortable. We're also very comfortable debating and pushing and arguing and knowing that it's all for a specific purpose and it's not personal. So I think there's all that stuff. And then also, we don't see each other very often. I mean, I see David currently like 5 times a year, maybe. We talk once a week. See him in person 5 times a year, maybe. And then, we talk once a week. We have a 1-hour call also with Elaine, who's our COO. And then David and I will chat and stuff separately and maybe talk here and there. But we have a healthy distance as well. I think that's also very helpful. We're not in each other's business all day long, not talking about the same things all day long. And I think all of those things really help. And I won't speak for him because that would be strange, but I have just a deep, deep respect and admiration for just how talented and skilled he is. I'm in awe half the time of like the things he's capable of doing. That also I think helps. It's if you're like, this guy I'm in business with or this woman I'm in business with, they're not really that good at what they do. I'm pulling them along or whatever. Like that's going to be hard too, you know? So having an admiration, I think, is a big part of it too. So anyway, those are some things that come off the top of my head, for why this has lasted so long.
Thanks for sharing. I think it's great because I'm at the early stage of starting a company with two other guys, and you know, we've had some headbutting in a good way, right? About sort of, because I'm sort of a product guy, but mostly like a business guy who likes to have opinions on product, which is really annoying to product designers. You know, but I can wireframe stuff and like maybe whatever draw stuff, but that's about it, right? Like that's the extent of my abilities. But again, I think this sort of balance of sort of having the positive friction about like we're arguing about this for a greater goal. The purpose is to build something great, in our opinion, whatever that is. But we agree on the big stuff, right? The high level vision, whatever. And then I think the odd thing is really interesting because I've had bad co-founders. This is what I'm going to be building will be my 4th or 5th company. And again, it's like there's no the serial entrepreneur crap. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just like I would love to have one company for 20 years if I could, right? That would be great. But you know, this hasn't worked out. I've had a couple of bad startups, a couple of bad co-founders. I've been the bad one sometimes, right? It wasn't a good fit, whatever. But I think this admiration piece is really interesting because we'll talk about something and the guys will go work on it and they'll build something in like a couple of days. I was like, what? Like, that's amazing. Like, you know, they send me a link and I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys are fucking crazy. This is so cool. Like, and then like, oh, we tried this thing. You talked about this thing. We did this thing and this worked out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm excited to hopefully work with you guys for a long time. And I think it's nice to have that feeling. I agree. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think in any relationship, it's nice to be able to admire. You should admire your partner for something. Sometimes many things. Sometimes whatever it is. Like it's a very important part of it. I think, and I don't think it's really discussed enough in the business context actually. And maybe I'll write something up about this. Part of the reason I like to do podcasts is because like it gives me ideas to write. And I hadn't really had you not asked me that question, it wouldn't be top of mind. But I think it is a sort of a secret piece of it that's important.
I want to be conscious of your time. When is your sort of cutoff? We can go a little over.
Me, I've got something now, but I can push it for like 10 more minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. If that's okay, because I think we're flowing, so it's a bit more time.
Yeah, it's fine. Sure.
And this is not the last question, but like, why did you say yes to come on the show? Because I have a small show. I don't post that often. But it was very nice, and I'm very thankful. And it just happens to be serendipitous that I'm talking to David in a couple of weeks, unless he cancels. Yeah. But let's see.
You know, honestly, it's a feeling. I don't know. I just had a good feel for it. I think the email you wrote was tight, clear. You referenced, I think you referenced the Underdog post, if I remember correctly. And like I was fired up about that topic, and you wanted to talk. It's just like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, I don't have there's no method. It's not like I never write back like how many listeners do you have. I mean, it's like does this seem like it could be an interesting conversation? And that's kind of like literally it.
Cool. No,
that's why.
It felt a little.
I
weird
also recognized your name. I feel like we've interacted or something.
We have on Twitter a bunch of time. Well, it's like
So there's a little bit of familiarity there. That I'm like, I don't really think I know this guy, but I kind of do. And let's do it.
I think in 10 years, however long I've been on Twitter, there've been like maybe 6 months in total that I've actually been active on Twitter, maybe less. And sort of I just sort of had a weird it was a weird app for a while. No one used it. I didn't have anything to promote, nothing to talk about. You know, I was busy doing my stuff. And then now it kind of feels like the AI thing is making me, I'm there mostly to learn. So that's kind of exciting. And then there's a few people like yourself who I learn about other things that not AI from. So it's pretty fun.
Cool.
A couple of last few things. You had this 2 visions of the future post you just put up.
Yeah.
And sort of, we're kind of living through, you know, a pretty big shift, right? There's of course the sort of large language model space that's blowing up, and then AR and VR, XR, whatever, vision's been around for a while. The last episode I had was with Professor Serge Belangi, who's one of the top guys in the world at this space. And you had these two visions. Could you talk a bit about what your concept was and is, and yeah, explore that?
Yeah, I think, so look, all the world's been taught, well, not all the world, all the tech world's been talking about over the past 6 months is the chat GPT. Let's say, I know it's a large language model and AI and AGI potentially down the road, but like chat GPT has sort of been on people's minds. And it's been fascinating to watch and also fascinating to use. And it's extraordinary, amazing thing. And one of the things that struck me most about it is just, it's so simple. It's so beautifully simple. You don't need to know anything. If you know how to ask a question, even if you know how to ask a terrible question, you get something back that's useful. And it's conversational, and it's so light and airy, and everyone in the world, some kid in India with a cheap phone can use it, for free. And there's something very special about that. Very, very special. And to me, that's one vision for sort of the future of computing. I don't even know what to call it. I mean, I know, whatever you call it. That's one direction. One arrow is heading in that direction. And then Apple yesterday comes out with something equally extraordinary, like a technical marvel. Absolutely mind-blowing tech. That is, in my opinion, about as opposite as you can get. And probably not this almost seems factual, from ChatGPT, which has captured the world's imagination recently. Apple's vision is currently bulky. This is the state of the art. So they're doing it. No doubt will get thinner, lighter, slimmer, the whole thing, right? But augmented reality, basically, and it's UI, it's adding to the world, it's something in front of you, it's something you wear, you feel, you have to put it on, it's in your way in a sense, even though it's sort of kind of like gets out of your way, but it's a different take on the future of, to me, it's about immersion, and ChatGPT is about information, and I basically saw two arrows pointing in distinctly different directions. Now, Apple uses some AI in the thing and will use more, and you could see these things merging in some ways, right? But there are two centers that are radically opposed, which is light, airy, out of your way, and heavy. And I don't mean heavy physically, although currently, but hard, like 12 cameras, 30 sensors, 6 different materials. Like, that's just a heavy thing, regardless of how slim or whatever, just to be able to do a few things, amazing things, but a very, very different experience and an arrow pointing in a different direction. And so I wanted to sort of like write this post about, there are two distinctly different versions of the future, or visions of the future right now, I think. And it's very interesting. And I saw the dichotomy, and I thought it was an interesting thing to talk about. And it wasn't denigrating either. They're both extraordinary and both usable, and both, they don't really even compete. It's not about that, but there are different takes. And I always sort of envisioned the future being interfaces in computers getting out of the way, getting lighter and lighter and lighter in a way. And I actually saw like Apple AirPods as a great example of this, of something that's sort of like in your ear. And if you could talk to it and Siri was really good, and you'd be like, you get most of what you need, audio and speaking, and it's light and out of the way. But the new Vision Pro is definitely in your face. And I just thought it was an interesting thing to talk about. And it was another one of these, like, I wrote it in 5 minutes, one Photoshop, kind of put two things next to each other to kind of make the point, and got it out there. And it seems to have been sparking a lot of conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's top of mind, and I mean, people, there's going to be more choice, right? People are going to choose more things.
Yep.
We could probably go on for a little longer, but I think we'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
If it was fun, let's find another time. Maybe there's another reason, another post to talk about. It'd be cool.
Sure, love to.
Thank you. Great. Take care and see you around. Good luck.
Yeah,
Thanks.
likewise. Take care. Yeah.